The large metal doors of the Galactic Council Hall opened with a soft hiss. Inside the massive chamber on Nexus Prime, hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that stretched up toward a domed ceiling. The monthly assembly was about to begin, and representatives from 67 different worlds had gathered to discuss galactic affairs. Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly through the entrance, his dark blue uniform marking him as a human diplomat. He carried a small datapad and wore the calm expression that had served him well during 3 years of galactic politics. Behind him, Commander Lisa Barnes followed quietly, her red hair tied back in regulation style and her green eyes scanning the alien faces that turned to watch them pass. The humans took their seats in the observer section, an area reserved for species that were not yet full council members. Around them sat other developing civilizations, all watching the proceedings with careful attention. The main floor belonged to the established powers of the galaxy. Ambassador Krell 9 of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium. His tall, thin body moved with the grace that marked his species, and his forearms gestured as he spoke. The translation device in Morrison's ear converted the alien's musical language into clear English. Fellow council members, Krell 9 began. Today we must address the situation in Sector 7. Our intelligence reports show continued expansion by several developing species, including the humans of Earth. A low murmur ran through the assembly. Morrison felt dozens of eyes turned toward him, but he kept his face neutral. He had expected this discussion. Krell 9 activated a holographic display that showed the local star map. Blue dots marked human colonies, while red zones indicated areas of concern. The humans have established settlements on 43 worlds, the ambassador continued. However, our analysis of their military capabilities shows significant weaknesses. The hologram shifted to show images of human ships. The vessels looked crude compared to the sleek energy-based designs favored by most galactic civilizations. Human ships had visible engines that burned chemical fuel, thick armor plating, and weapon systems that fired solid projectiles. Their technology remains primitive, Krell 9 explained. They still use kinetic weapons, actual metal projectiles fired by chemical explosions or magnetic acceleration. Their ships move through space using controlled explosions of chemical fuel. Most concerning, they show no evidence of energy shield technology or plasma-based weapons. Several council members made sounds of amusement. The crystalline delegate, a being made of living crystal, chimed like wind bells as it laughed. The massive Graxian representative, whose bear-like appearance hid one of the galaxy's most advanced minds, shook his head in what humans would recognize as disbelief. Commander Barnes leaned close to Morrison's ear. "Sir, I'm receiving a coded message from Earth Command," she whispered. "Priority Alpha." Morrison nodded slightly and activated his personal communicator. The message appeared as text on his datapad, visible only to him. His expression remained calm, but Barnes noticed his jaw tighten slightly as he read. The message was brief. Fourth and Empire fleet movements detected near Outer Rim territories. Large formation spotted 3 light-years from Kepler Station. Estimated 150-plus vessels. Purpose unknown. Stand by for further intelligence. On the main floor, Krell 9 continued his presentation. The humans refuse to adopt standard galactic military technologies. They insist on using weapons that most civilizations abandoned thousands of years ago. Their ships carry nuclear missiles, actual explosive devices that create uncontrolled fusion reactions. This caused another wave of amusement through the assembly. Nuclear weapons were considered ancient technology, useful only for mining operations or emergency power generation. No modern military would consider them practical weapons. Furthermore, the Zephyrian ambassador said, "Human ships lack basic defensive systems. They use thick metal armor instead of energy shields. Their approach to space combat appears to be based on ancient warfare principles. Hit hard and hope your armor holds." The Vegan representative, a creature that looked like a walking flower, spoke up through its translator. "Perhaps we should classify them as a protected species. Their military capabilities seem insufficient for modern galactic threats." Nods. of agreement came from around the chamber. The Galactic Council had protocols for dealing with developing civilizations that could not defend themselves. Such species were usually placed under the protection of more advanced neighbors, giving up independence in exchange for safety. Krell 9 gestured toward Morrison. The human representative is present today. Perhaps he would like to address the Council regarding our proposal for protective status. Morrison stood slowly and walked to the speaker's platform reserved for observers. The platform was smaller than the main podium and positioned lower, a clear indication of status. He placed his hands on the rail and looked out at the assembled aliens. "Honorable Council members," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic system. "I thank you for your concern about human welfare. However, Earth's government has instructed me to respectfully decline any offer of protected status." A moment of silence followed his words. Then the crystalline delegate chimed again, a sound that conveyed surprise. The Graxian representative leaned forward in his seat. "Captain Morrison," Krell 9 said, "surely you understand the implications of remaining unprotected. The galaxy contains many aggressive species. The Vorthan Empire alone has conquered 17 civilizations in the past century. Your kinetic weapons and chemical rockets would be useless against their plasma cannons and energy shields." Morrison's expression remained calm. "Ambassador Krell 9, I appreciate your warning about the Vorthons. However, humanity prefers to handle its own defense arrangements." Barnes received another message on her communicator. This one made her face go pale. She quickly typed a response and sent it through encrypted channels back to Earth Command. Tucker. New intelligence was troubling. Vorthon scout ships had been detected at the edge of human space, conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance missions. The Empire's military doctrine was well known. They always scouted their targets thoroughly before launching full-scale invasions. "Captain Morrison," the Vegan representative said, "we mean no disrespect to human courage. However, practical considerations must guide policy. Your species has achieved impressive expansion given your technological limitations, but expansion without adequate defense is merely delayed extinction." More aliens nodded agreement. The logic seemed clear to them. Humans were brave but foolish, expanding beyond their ability to protect themselves. Morrison smiled slightly. "Honored delegates, humanity has survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and 2 world wars using nothing but determination and creativity. We've learned that sometimes the simplest solutions work best." He paused and looked around the chamber. "We thank the Council for its offer of protection, but Earth will defend its own territories and citizens. If the Vorthans or any other empire wants to test human defenses, they're welcome to try." The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief. Finally, Krell 9 spoke. "Very well, Captain Morrison. The Council will record humanity's decision. We hope you will reconsider before it becomes too late." Morrison nodded politely and returned to his seat. Around the chamber, alien delegates shook their heads or made their species-equivalent gestures of concern. To them, humanity had just signed its own death warrant through stubborn pride. But Barnes noticed something that the aliens missed. Morrison's smile had never reached his eyes, and his fingers had tapped a specific pattern on the rail while he spoke. A code that meant "message received and understood" in Earth military protocol. The galaxy thought humanity was defenseless. Soon, they would learn how wrong they were. 3 weeks after the Council meeting, Captain Danny Wells stood on the bridge of Kepler Station, staring at his tactical display with growing concern. The frontier outpost sat at the edge of human space, a lonely metal structure orbiting a gas giant in the Kepler 442 system. Wells had commanded the station for 2 years, and nothing exciting had ever happened here. That was about to change. "Sir," called Lieutenant Sam Carter from the sensor station, "I'm picking up massive energy signatures at the system's edge. Multiple contacts, moving in formation." Wells moved to Carter's station and looked at the display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of red dots were approaching the system, moving faster than any known human ship. The computer identified them, As Vorthan Empire vessels, how many? Wells asked, keeping his voice steady. Carter's fingers danced over his controls. Still counting, sir. At least 150 contacts. Maybe more. He looked up with wide eyes. Sir, some of these signatures are massive. Dreadnought, class or bigger. Wells felt his stomach drop. His defense force consisted of 6 patrol ships, each carrying a crew of 20. They were built for border patrol, not major fleet actions. Against a Vorthan invasion force, they might as well be throwing rocks. Open a channel to Earth Command, Wells ordered. Priority Alpha, full encryption, while Carter established the connection. Wells watched the Vorthan fleet approach. Their ships were beautiful in a deadly way, sleek hulls that seemed to glow with internal energy, smooth curves that spoke of advanced technology. He had seen pictures of Vorthan vessels in intelligence reports, but seeing them in person was different. The communication system crackled to life. Kepler Station, this is Earth Command. We read your Priority Alpha. Report. Earth Command, this is Captain Wells at Kepler Station. We have a Vorthan invasion fleet entering our system. Count is approximately 150 vessels, including heavy units. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. A pause, then. Understood, Kepler Station. Patch the broadcast through to us. Wells nodded to Carter, who activated the alien transmission. The bridge speakers filled with a deep, rumbling voice speaking accented English. Attention, human settlements. I am Admiral Thex Prime of the Vorthan Empire 4th Fleet. You are ordered to surrender all military installations and civilian populations within 48 standard hours. Any resistance will result in complete destruction of your colonies and the elimination of your species from this sector. The message repeated twice more, then cut off. Wells and his crew sat in stunned silence. Sir, Carter said quietly, should we evacuate the civilian population on Kepler 3? Wells considered this. The mining colony on the system's 3rd planet held nearly 10,000 people. There was no way to evacuate them all in 48 hours and nowhere to take them even if they could. Negative, Wells said. We stay and do our job. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room contained the most powerful people in human military command, all focused on the holographic display showing the Vorthan fleet's position. Report, Sullivan said simply. Colonel Ryan Mitchell, a tough man with gray hair and sharp eyes, spoke first. Intelligence confirms Admiral Thex Prime's reputation. He's conquered 17 worlds in the past decade. His fleet specializes in overwhelming force followed by complete occupation. Dr. Nina Foster, a small woman with quick movements and bright eyes, pulled up technical data on her tablet. Vorthan ships use plasma-based weapons and multi-layered energy shields. Their smallest destroyers carry more firepower than our largest cruisers. Their shields can absorb direct nuclear hits. Captain Alex Turner from Deep Space Command shook his head. Our frontier defenses weren't designed for this level of threat. Captain Wells has 6 patrol boats. The nearest human fleet is 3 weeks away. Sullivan listened to each report without changing expression. She had commanded Earth's military forces for 8 years, and she had prepared for this day since taking command. What about the Galactic Council? Asked Colonel Mitchell. Will they intervene? Negative, Sullivan replied. Ambassador Morrison reports that the Council considers this an internal matter. They won't act unless Vorthan forces threaten Council. Member worlds. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity was on its own, just as they had told the Council they wanted to be. Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet. Admiral, there is one thing. Our deep space sensors show the Vorthan fleet is advancing slowly. They're taking time to scan each system, probably looking for hidden defenses or fleet concentrations. How long until they reach the core worlds? Sullivan asked. At their current speed, about 6 weeks to reach Earth, but they'll hit the outer colonies first. Kepler Station will be their first major target. Sullivan nodded and stood up. She walked to the secure communication terminal and entered her personal authorization code. The screen activated, showing Fleet Admiral Tony Rivers at Luna Command. Tony, she said, it's time. Rivers, a weathered man in his 60s, nodded grimly. How many do we face? Intelligence estimates 200 ships, maybe more. Thex Prime is leading personally. Understood. I'll begin activation immediately. Sullivan cut the connection and turned back to her staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to discover whether 30 years of preparation was enough. At Kepler Station, Captain Wells received new orders from Earth Command. He was to maintain his position and report on Vorthon movements, but under no circumstances was he to engage the enemy fleet. His small force was to serve as an early warning system only. Wells read the orders twice, then looked at his crew. Lieutenant Carter was barely 25 years old. Ensign Paula Grant, his communications officer, had graduated from the academy 6 months ago. None of them had ever seen real combat. Sir, Carter said, the Vorthon fleet is still approaching. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours. Wells made a decision that would have surprised the Galactic Council. Instead of retreating or hiding, he ordered his ships to form a defensive line between the Vorthon fleet and the civilian colony. All ships, this is Kepler Station. Form up on my position. We're going to show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens our people. The 6 patrol ships, tiny compared to the approaching Vorthon dreadnoughts, moved into formation. Their crews knew they had no chance of victory, but they also knew they couldn't run. Admiral Thex Prime watched the human ships on his tactical display and felt amused. 6 small vessels against his mighty fleet. It would be over in minutes. He had no idea that his easy victory was about to become the galaxy's greatest surprise. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, something extraordinary was happening. For 20 years, the galaxy had watched human mining operations in this region, seeing nothing more than industrial facilities extracting metals and minerals from floating rocks. Cargo ships came and went regularly, carrying ore to the inner planets. Everything looked normal and boring. It was the perfect cover. Fleet Admiral Tony Rivers stood in the command center of Facility 7, watching dozens of screens that showed mining platforms throughout the asteroid belt. But today, these platforms were revealing their true purpose. Begin Phase 1 activation, Rivers ordered. Across the belt, massive mining structures started to change. What had appeared to be simple ore processors split open like metal flowers, revealing hidden docking bays. Asteroid surfaces that looked natural cracked apart, showing reinforced tunnel entrances. The largest facility, built inside an asteroid nearly 20 kilometers wide, opened like a giant mouth. Ships began to emerge. The first vessel out was the UFS Defiance, a heavy cruiser that looked nothing like the sleek alien designs the galaxy was used to. Her hull was thick and angular, covered in gray armor plating that seemed crude compared to the glowing surfaces of Vorthon ships. Massive engines jutted from her rear, designed to burn chemical fuel in controlled explosions. Captain, Ben Parker stood on the Defiance's bridge watching his ship clear the asteroid dock. He was a 40-year-old career officer with steady hands and calm eyes. Beside him, Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez checked weapon systems, while Commander Steve Johnson coordinated with other ships emerging from hidden bases. All weapon systems, show green, Rodriguez reported. Railgun batteries charged and ready. Nuclear missile tubes loaded. Parker nodded. Thank you, Amy. Steve, what's our fleet status? Johnson consulted his displays. 60 ships have cleared their berths so far, sir. Admiral Rivers estimates another hour for full deployment. Through the bridge windows, Parker could see more ships emerging from concealed positions. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and massive carriers, all of them built with the same basic design philosophy. Thick armor, powerful engines, and weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. On the Galactic Council's monitoring station at Proxima Centauri, alien technicians watched the human fleet emerge with growing amazement. Sensor Officer Vex 12, a Zephyrian with 4 arms and compound eyes, activated emergency communication protocols. Council Command, this is Proxima Station. We are detecting massive human fleet activation in the Sol System asteroid belt. Current, Count is over 300 vessels. The response came immediately. Proxima Station, confirm your count. Did you say 300? Affirmative, Council command. Wait, the count is still rising. Now showing 400 vessels. These ships were completely hidden from our sensors. In his private chamber on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Krell 9 received the report and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Genuine surprise. The humans had been hiding a fleet larger than most galactic civilizations possessed, but as he studied the technical data, his surprise turned to puzzlement. These ships use kinetic weapons exclusively, he muttered, to his aide. Railguns, missile systems, projectile cannons, no energy weapons at all. And look at their armor. Solid metal plating, like ancient warships. His aide, a younger Zephyrian named Vel 3, studied the data. Sir, our analysts calculate that these weapons would be completely ineffective against modern energy shields. The humans have built a large fleet, but it appears to be technologically obsolete. Meanwhile, Dr. Nina Foster was in her laboratory deep beneath the Colorado mountains, making final preparations for humanity's secret weapon. Not the fleet. The galaxy could see that now. The real secret was what she had discovered about alien technology. Computer, display energy shield analysis, Vorthan Empire vessels, she commanded. The holographic display showed a detailed breakdown of Vorthan shield technology. Foster had been studying captured alien equipment for 15 years, ever since a damaged Vorthan scout ship had been recovered by human salvage teams. The shield generators create a field that absorbs and deflects energy-based attacks, she explained to her assistant, a young scientist named Dr. Pete Chang. Plasma bolts, laser beams, particle weapons. The shields can handle all of them. Chang nodded. But what about physical objects? Foster smiled. That's the beautiful part, Pete. These shields were designed specifically for energy combat. They assume that any advanced civilization would abandon kinetic weapons. The field that stops a plasma bolt is nearly useless against a chunk of metal moving at high speed. She pulled up another display showing test results. We've run hundreds of simulations. A railgun projectile moving at significant velocity passes right through Vorthan shields like they aren't even there. Back in the asteroid belt, the human fleet continued to deploy. Admiral Rivers stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UFS Constitution, watching the final ships emerge from hiding. The Constitution was the largest vessel in the fleet, a massive battleship with armor 2 meters thick and enough firepower to level a city. Final count, sir, reported his aide, Captain Linda Hayes. 500 vessels ready for deployment. Rivers nodded. Any word from our scouts at Kepler Station? Captain Wells reports the Vorthan fleet is 6 hours out from his position. They're still broadcasting surrender demands. And the Galactic Council? Ambassador Morrison says they're offering to mediate, but only if we accept protected status. First. Rivers almost smiled. Tell Morrison to thank them for their concern, but we'll handle this ourselves. The Admiral opened a fleet-wide communication channel. 500 ship captains appeared on his screen, men and women who had trained for this moment for years. Ladies and gentlemen, Rivers began, today we face the most powerful military force the galaxy has seen in a century. The Vorthans have conquered 17 civilizations using superior technology and overwhelming force. They believe their energy, shields and plasma weapons make them invincible. He paused, looking at each face on the screen. They're about to learn that sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. The galaxy thinks our kinetic weapons are primitive and useless. Let's show them how wrong they are. Captain Parker felt a surge of pride as he listened to the Admiral's words. Around him, his crew prepared for battle with the calm efficiency that marked human military service. They knew their ships looked crude compared to alien vessels. They knew the galaxy considered their weapons obsolete, but they also knew something the galaxy didn't understand. Humans had always believed in using the right tool for the job, regardless of how advanced or primitive it seemed. They had studied their enemies carefully and built their fleet specifically to exploit weaknesses that no one else had noticed. All ships prepare for jump to Kepler system, Admiral Rivers announced. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can do. The massive fleet began to move, chemical engines burning bright against the darkness of space. To alien observers, they looked like relics from a bygone age. Soon, the galaxy would learn that sometimes, relics could be the most dangerous weapons of all. Admiral Thex Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet of 200 vessels had reached the edge of the Kepler system, and victory seemed certain. The 6 human patrol boats that had formed a defensive line looked like insects facing a storm. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are requesting communication." Thex Prime laughed, a deep sound that rumbled through the bridge. "Put them through. Let's hear their surrender." The main screen activated, showing Captain Wells on the bridge of Kepler Station. The human looked calm, which surprised the Vorthan admiral. Most species begged for mercy when facing the Empire's might. "Admiral Thex Prime," Wells said, "I'm authorized to deliver a message from Earth Command. Humanity thanks the Vorthan Empire for demonstrating the weakness of energy-based weapons. Your fleet will serve as an excellent test of our defensive systems." The communication cut off before Thex Prime could respond. Around the bridge, his officers exchanged confused glances. The human had spoken as if he held some advantage, which was clearly impossible. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting multiple jump signatures at the system's edge. Large formations incoming." The tactical display changed, showing new contacts appearing throughout the system. Dozens of ships, then hundreds, materialized from hyperspace jumps. But these weren't the sleek vessels Thex Prime expected. They looked crude and primitive, like something from the galaxy's ancient past. "Analysis," Thex Prime ordered. His tactical officer studied the readings. "The ships appear to be human in origin. Total count is approximately 500 vessels, but sir, their technology readings are unusual." "Explain." "They're using chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, and nuclear missiles. No energy shields, no plasma weapons. It's like fighting an army from 1,000 years ago." Thex Prime felt relief wash over him. For a moment he had worried that humanity possessed some unknown technology. Instead, they had simply built more primitive ships. "All vessels maintain formation," he commanded. "We'll destroy their entire fleet and then proceed with planetary bombardment. This will be over quickly." The human fleet approached in a formation that looked strange to Vorthan eyes. Instead of the elegant curves favored by most galactic militaries, they moved in straight lines and rigid angles. Their ships were dark gray and covered in thick armor plating that seemed wasteful compared to energy shields. Captain Parker stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the Vorthan fleet through his tactical display. The alien ships were beautiful, he had to admit. They glowed with internal energy and moved with grace that spoke of advanced technology. "Range to target?" he asked. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez checked her instruments. 60,000 kilometers and closing. Their shields are active. "Very good. All ships prepare to engage. Remember, we fire fast and we fire hard." Throughout the human fleet, weapon systems powered up. Railguns charged their magnetic coils, nuclear missiles armed their warheads, and kinetic cannons loaded tungsten projectiles. The technology looked ancient, but it had been built with modern precision and materials. Admiral Rivers opened a fleet communication channel. "All ships, this is your moment. Show the galaxy what humans can do. Fire at will." The space between the two fleets suddenly filled with streaks of light as the human ships opened fire. But instead of the colorful energy beams common in galactic warfare, these were physical projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The first railgun rounds reached the Vorthan fleet in seconds. Thex Prime watched on his tactical display as the projectiles approached his ship's energy shields. He expected to see the rounds deflected or absorbed, as always happened with primitive kinetic weapons. Instead, the tungsten rods passed through the shields as if they weren't there. The first Vorthan destroyer, the Swift Victory, took 3 railgun hits to her hull. The projectiles, moving at significant fractions of light speed, punched through the ship's armor like paper. Atmosphere exploded from the holes, and internal systems failed as the rods continued through the vessel. "What happened?" Thex Prime demanded. "Why didn't our shield stop those rounds?" His tactical officer stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, the shields are functioning normally, but they're designed for energy weapons. These physical projectiles are passing right through the defensive field. More human rounds reached the Vorthon fleet. Ship after ship took hits, their hulls pierced by metal rods moving faster than anything the aliens had expected. The beautiful vessels that had conquered 17 worlds were being torn apart by what looked like primitive artillery. Return. Fire, Thex Prime ordered. All ships target the human fleet. The Vorthon ships unleashed their plasma cannons, sending streams of superheated gas toward the human vessels. The energy beams struck human armor and burned into the thick metal plating. Several human ships took damage, but their armor absorbed much of the attack. Captain Parker felt his ship shake as plasma bolts hit the Defiance's hull. Damage report, he called. Commander Johnson checked his displays. Forward armor damaged but holding, no critical systems affected. Parker nodded. Human ships had been built to take punishment and keep fighting. Amy, target their flagship. Full nuclear spread. Rodriguez smiled as she programmed the missile attack. Nuclear missiles away, sir. Time to target. 90 seconds. Across the human fleet, nuclear weapons launched toward the Vorthon vessels. The Vorthons tried to intercept them with their point defense systems, but the humans had learned from decades of study. Their missiles used basic stealth technology and deployed decoy warheads that confused alien targeting systems. The nuclear explosions began lighting up space like artificial suns. Each detonation overwhelmed Vorthon shields and electronics, leaving the beautiful alien ships vulnerable to follow-up attacks from human kinetic weapons. Admiral Thex Prime watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and felt something he had never experienced before: helplessness. His advanced weapons couldn't penetrate human armor effectively, while human weapons ignored his shields completely. "Sir," his communication officer called, "we're receiving emergency broadcasts from the Galactic Council. They're demanding to know what's happening." Thex Prime looked at his tactical display. In 30 minutes of fighting, he had lost over half his fleet. The humans had lost only 12 ships, and those were still fighting. "Send a message to the Council," he said quietly. "Tell them that human kinetic weapons are completely effective against energy shields. Tell them we were wrong about everything." The Swift Victory exploded as her reactor was hit by a human railgun round. The Destroyer of Worlds shook as nuclear missiles detonated against her hull, overloading her shields and damaging her weapons. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Krell 9 watched the battle through long-range sensors with growing amazement. The Vorthon Empire, one of the galaxy's greatest military powers, was being defeated by weapons that most civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. "Sir," his aide said, "should we offer assistance to the Vorthons?" Krell 9 shook his head slowly. "No. We need to contact our military commanders immediately. If human kinetic weapons can defeat Vorthon shields, they can defeat ours too." The battle ended 2 hours after it began. The Vorthon fleet was completely destroyed, their ships broken, and drifting in space. Admiral Thex Prime's final transmission before his flagship exploded was simple: "We underestimated them. All of us underestimated them." Captain Parker stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical display showing the debris field where the Vorthon fleet had been. Around him, his crew worked quietly, still processing what they had accomplished. "Sir," Rodriguez said, "Earth Command is requesting a full report." Parker nodded. "Tell them the obsolete fleet performed exactly as designed. The galaxy now knows that sometimes the old ways work best." News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had dismissed human technology as primitive suddenly began reconsidering their military doctrines. Energy shields that had protected civilizations for millennia were useless against weapons that most worlds had forgotten how to build. Captain Morrison received an emergency message at the Galactic Council chambers. He was summoned to an immediate session where the Council voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership with a permanent seat on the Security Council. When Morrison addressed the Assembly, his words were simple: "Humanity appreciates the Council's offer. We look forward to working with all member species to maintain galactic peace." But everyone in the chamber understood the real message. The humans had revealed that the galaxy's most advanced military technology had a fundamental weakness, and humanity was the only species that had built their entire fleet to exploit that weakness. Dr. Foster's final report to Earth Command was brief. The test was successful. Human kinetic weapons are completely effective against all known energy shield designs. Recommend immediate production increase for fleet expansion. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Sometimes the most primitive technology could be the most advanced solution, and sometimes the species everyone underestimated could change everything.